guest. He is a coach and he is an inspiration. And personally in my own life, especially in my early 20s, he was very much an influence in my life and definitely inspired me and spoke some wisdom into my world. So I'm really excited to get to interview him today. And I hope you guys really catch his passion for people and loving people and seeing people succeed. Steve, really happy to have you today with us.
Naomi, I am a huge fan of yours from the day we met till now. I admire you and think you're beautiful inside and out, and I'm so happy to be with you.
Thank you. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about, I know a little bit about your journey, but I feel not even all of it. But let's go back to when you were younger and you were just a little boy. What were some of the things that you used to dream of doing or being, or what were the things that inspired you when you were young?
Yeah, I think it's probably important to note my background was pretty interesting. My parents were pastors. My dad was a pastor and my mom a pastor's wife. So we were raised in a really intense environment of service, that the belief that our entire lives were for the purpose of serving our community, serving the world, serving the broken people in the world. So that really impacted my thinking as a young person. At age 11, I had this awareness that I should be a pastor. That was probably oversimplified because that was my context. I saw the world through the lenses that I had. I didn't have a bigger view of the world. I had these narrow ones. But at age 11, I had this sort of awakening that I was meant to serve. And because of my context, pastoral work seemed to be the most logical. But I do have memories, and I don't know if this is just typical of a little boy, but I certainly have memories of serving my world as a police officer, serving the world in the army, that adventurous side of service. But when I was 11, I can still remember the day actually where I think I had this epiphany. I should be a pastor. I could serve my world and make it a better place.
I love that. And it's cool that it's just interesting how the people that influence you the most sometimes also push you in a direction because but you knew service was something that you wanted to do.
Absolutely.
So what would be some of the people that you would say in your life that have been mentors to you, that have influenced you the most, you would say?
Is it too typical to say my dad
No.
as an influence, as a mentor? I love him and admire him as a dad, but also as a professional, as a clergyman, as a minister. The way he conducted himself with grace and courage and consistency and passion to help and to serve. He's one of the greatest influences of my life. It's an interesting time in my life right now, Naomi, because he's just turning 84 in February, and he's really spiraling down in dementia. And both cognitively limited and physically limited. So this is a real emotional time for me to watch my dad go through that phase of life, because I have admired him so much and loved him and learned from him. So this is a really unique time to see this circle of life happen. But other than my father, a lot of my young heroes were two categories. One was this pastoral world, which there were teachers and preachers and pastors and ministers that influenced me. But the other side of the influencers were authors. I was a bookworm. I got in trouble in school all the time. The teacher would be up at the front of the class teaching, and I'd have a little pocket paper book novel hidden underneath my desk. I'm reading it, flipping the pages, and get caught, have the book taken from me. So this is a very vivid imagination and storytelling. And that really became a passion for me. In fact, in grade 5, can I tell you a grade 5 story?
Yes.
In grade 5, I fell in love with my teacher. Her name was Mrs. Adams. First of all, she was beautiful. But at the end of the day, I think we dismissed at 3:15 every day. But at 3 o'clock, she would say, "Okay, class, put away your books. We're gonna spend some time, and she would take the last 15 minutes of the day and read to us from the Chronicles of Narnia. Are you you're familiar with the,
Yes.
that epic story by C.S. Lewis?
Yeah.
And so that story, her telling the story, she became a significant person in my life. The power of imagination and how story can transform and change and awaken. And I carried that both into my work as a pastor, but also still continue to really lean on the power of story as part of my work now as a professional business coach.
That's amazing. And it's actually neat because as I've been doing these different interviews, this theme of storytelling has come up. And you are a beautiful storyteller, and you're very charismatic and engaging, and you just invite people in. It's amazing when you speak. So it's awesome just to even listen to you. But now that you said, okay, I did that in pastoral world and now I'm in the business world, when you did that pivot, like how did you face some of those like fears or things to take that leap to go from one industry into something completely different? How was that for you? Fears or things to take that leap to go from one industry into something completely different. How was that for you?
Certainly there was a time, there's this phrase that I've learned, it's called liminal space. And it's the space in between what was and what is coming. It's this void or desert or wilderness of feeling lost, feeling confused, feeling uncertain. You're letting go of something, but you're not quite sure what you're going to hold on to next. And I had a really profound and painful liminal space experience in my life when I left pastoral work. Because of the way I was raised, there was a real sense that was the only thing I was created to do. Mm-hmm. And that if I was going to leave that, I was leaving my destiny or leaving my God-given purpose. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of baggage and intensity around letting go of that world and finding another. So there was a lot of internal feelings like I was falling, a lot of sense of confusion. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was for a while. So there was a lot of fear in there. And also there's a little bit of a belief, I think, not just in my past career, but in a lot of people's minds, that how do they switch from, if you're an engineer, how do you switch to something else, or a pastor, or somebody who's in IT, how do you become this? There's this self-doubt that we have in making that transition. So I certainly journeyed through that. I had to trust my instincts. Mm-hmm. I had to do some deep work internally, but also, and I know you love to talk about branding as well. And I had to also find out who I was in terms of my personal brand, which for me is much deeper than just my logo or my website. But my brand meaning who am I and what value do I bring to this world that I live in?
That's so good. And really, thank you for being open. It's definitely a space I think a lot of us get caught in for whatever reasons, whether it's societal pressures or parental pressures or just our own self-doubts, that space of, I know that there's more, but right now I don't know how to get there. And so if there's someone watching that is in that space of COVID's happening, all these things are happening in our world, and they feel like, I have to change, I have to pivot, I have to move. What would be some things that would be helpful for someone who is in that space that you're talking about?
Maybe first identifying what we need to move out of in that liminal space. So I don't know if I coined this phrase, but I had never heard it anywhere else before. But it was this, as I was reflecting on my life, I was actually in a Wave coffee shop in Calgary, and I was reflecting on my life, and this little phrase popped into my mind, and it was this: imposed identity. So meaning that somewhere in my life, my family or my environment or how I was raised, somehow somebody or something said to me, this is who you are, and this is who you will always be. And recognizing that came from an external source and not me internally. Somebody else was trying to wallpaper me into their story, because really I hadn't explored who am I and what's my brand and what's my purpose? And so I think, first of all, I had to have an awakening that I was not required to follow that imposed identity any further, but that I had permission and that I was empowered to begin to find my own identity and find my own way. So I think somehow we give ourselves permission, or maybe even if somebody's listening today, I can say, I give you permission, if there's any weight to that, to let go of whatever's been imposed on you. And of course, COVID is imposing lots of things. There's all kinds of limitations and restrictions. And I would encourage people to say, okay, we respect that. We respect how you've got to where you are. That's important. But you also have all of these possibilities in front of you, that the future is wide open. The possibilities are immense, and have the courage to look to the future. She can't wait to meet you. And life can be beautiful with new possibilities that you never imagined, or new possibilities that you've imagined but never had the courage to pursue.
You should write a book, Steve.
Yeah, I probably should, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you should. So maybe that's something you can work on. It's funny, as you're talking, I watch it, like you get on YouTube and you went to those like rabbit holes of speakers or whatever. And I think I got onto graduation speeches one day, and you have always, for some reason, reminded me of Denzel Washington. I don't know why, but you just do. And he has this graduation speech. So as I was listening to you, I was like, yeah, there's the connection again. Like, you just have this way of tying it all together. And so thank you. That was like amazing. And I do think a lot from that.
Beautiful. I'm going to go watch Denzel as soon as I get off this interview.
I don't know why. I just feel like there's a connection.
Naomi, believe it or not, I've been told that I remind them of Denzel Washington. I'm going to say 50 or 60 different times from different people. It's unbelievable.
Okay, so it's not just me.
I'm the white Denzel.
You are. You really are. So you can use that in your book, just how you can tie that stuff together.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that's beautiful. And there's definitely a space where you have to face fear. And so what is your definition of fear? How do you look at fear? What are your thoughts on that?
Wow, what a fantastic question. I feel, however I answer that, it's going to be incomplete, but I'll take a stab at it. I think one of my favorite quotes, because I don't have it in front of me, is something like this: fear knocked at the door, and when I answered it, there was no one there. So what that concept says to me, that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, the fear of what we're wanting to experience is worse than the actual experience. I'm actually reading The Alchemist right now. Have you read that? If you haven't, put it on your list for 2021. A Brazilian writer, I believe, is originally written in Portuguese, and translated into English. And in that story, the hero is a shepherd boy who is following, and this is the phrase they use, he's following his personal legend. So he's got this great life, comfortable life as a shepherd, but he has this encounter and he realizes that there's a personal legend that he needs to pursue. But he has this fear of suffering, this fear of, well, if I pursue my personal legend, maybe it'll cost me too much. Maybe my heart will suffer too much. And there's a beautiful quote in the book that says, the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering. And if I know that's not a complete definition of fear, but many times it's overcoming that fear of suffering. And then we realize, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it would. The anticipation of it actually was more difficult than the actual experience.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And being able to look at it for what it is and say, what can you throw at me, and take those like steps into it. And then you realize it's not so bad. It's not so bad.
Yeah, and that's some of the work that I do as a coach.
Yes.
Is helping people overcome fear. And one of the keys is to break down that journey into actionable step. Sometimes I like to call it monstering. The thing that we want, it becomes so big, it's almost a monster of challenges and difficulties and obstacles. But the human being, the human body, the human mind, the human spirit have all been formed in a way to overcome tough times and to overcome obstacles. Sometimes we just need to break it down into, and I ask this question a lot, Naomi, in sessions with people. I say, what could you do in the next 7 days to move the journey or the story forward? Now, don't worry about a month from now or a year from now, but what could we do in the next 7 days? And then after that 7 days, okay, what could we do in the next 7 days? So breaking it down into these actionable items, incremental transformation, as opposed to this sudden, massive, suddenly I'm a new person, but breaking that down. And the work that I do, sometimes I feel a little bit like I'm a Sherpa, where somebody's climbing a mountain for the first time, and the Sherpa or the guide has been up the mountain a few times already and says, hey, this is the best path, this is the way that you can go. Because I've had Sherpas in my life that in really dark times, they came alongside me and helped guide me. So that helping overcome that fear bit by bit, one step at a time.
That analogy is really good. The Sherpa. I know my parents have climbed a few mountains with some Sherpas, and I'm sure it is very helpful.
Wow.
Yeah. So now that you've found your brand, you found your voice, what are the things that you, like if we were to say your legacy, what are the things that you want to leave for people or you want people to feel?
Oh, I love that you used that phrase, what do I want people to feel? Because originally the word brand, if we look at the etymology of it, it was a fire or a flame, a piece of burning wood or a torch or a sword that was set on fire, and then you would brand an animal, you'd mark an animal. To me, branding is, again, not a logo or a website or a bio, but it's really what burns inside of you. What's your brand is your burning, your brand is your fire, your brand is your passion. And then we take that passion, that burning, and we find words and we find images that communicate that. And I think probably one of the things I would caution the listeners about is don't be shallow with your brand. Don't just tell the story that you think other people want to hear, or what will sell in the market, or what looks good on a website. That's all. That stuff comes later. That's in marketing and packaging and your elevator pitch, or if you're a business owner or an artist or creative. But the what makes that really successful, that external stuff that we tell to the public, the real power is what burns inside of us. What's the brand? How have we been branded by life, by God, by the universe, by our experiences? And if we can tap into that and then articulate it, I really believe that will set us apart from other people who are just taking a shallow approach to who they are and their brand. So that, and for me, I did that by an exercise called mining for values. And a coach did it with me probably, I'm going to say 20 years ago, where we looked at a list of about 200 words, and these were all powerful, virtuous words like wealth or meaning or competition or achievement and adventure, 200 words. And my coach walked me through this exercise. And if anyone's listening and you want to walk through this exercise, fire me off an email. I'd love to share that with you. I walked through these 200 words and I chose 20 out of those 200. It was really difficult because it was 200 beautiful words. And I chose 20. And then out of those 20, I chose 9. That was really tough because I had to let go of 11 other words that I really liked that had meaning. And then out of the 9, I narrowed it down to 3. We use the phrase core values. I like to use the word essential. These 3 essential values. And one, it doesn't mean I don't value the other things, But out of all of those amazing things, these were the three things that I valued most. And then that became my canvas, or maybe even my paintbrushes. I took those three words and I began to paint what my brand was. I began to paint my belief system. I began to paint my behaviors from these essential values that I discovered.
That's so awesome. And I hope that you guys that are listening take him up on that and you find him. Where could people find you if they want to?
The company that I'm with has the most bizarre name, but it's so bizarre, hopefully it's memorable. Our company is called Rhapsody, as in the Bohemian, Rhapsody Strategies. And it's a business coaching, business training company. And our name tells the story. Hopefully this will make it memorable. First of all, Rhapsody, the Bohemian Rhapsody, is an epic story or an epic poem. And as a coach, I believe that everybody's life is an epic story waiting to be told, or an epic poem, especially for our listeners today, Naomi. There's very few beige people probably listening today. Everybody's bright and colorful and they have a story to tell. So our company really believes in that story as an important part, your dream, your longing, your legacy, all of the things that you want your life to be. So that's the Rhapsody side. And then strategies, the second part, Rhapsody Strategies, is the fact that you actually have to take that dream and turn it into action. A lot of dreamers dream their whole lives and it never manifests or becomes reality because people don't have the strategy to actually bring it into existence. That was the longest answer to the question of what my company is, but it's rhapsodystrategies.com. is where you can find me. Or you can just go old school and Google Steve Osmond, Calgary business coach.
Okay. So either way, and I'm going to make sure when I figure out all the tech, how to make sure people have links to what you do and where to find you. I feel like I should sign up for that. So whoever's watching, you're probably feeling the same. As a coach, do you help all different types of people? And how is that experience for you, tying it all back to that young boy that wanted to serve? Do you see the common threads in all of that?
What a great interviewer you are. My gracious, look how you just looped that right back full circle. Well done, well done. And that shows me that you're actually listening. Even though I had this imposed identity from the first part of my life, there still was this thread that I wanted to carry over into the next chapter. So I experimented with a couple of things. I started a business. I tried a few things here and there. And then through a series of conversations, I found this world of coaching, this profession called business coaching or leadership coaching. So I threw all my eggs into that basket. I went to New York State to get certified as a professional coach. Then I looked for a tribe to join. I didn't want, one of my values, of my three essential values, is belonging. And so I didn't want to be an independent coach that just worked on their own. I wanted to join a tribe or a group, a cadre of coaches. Found this great crew of coaches at Rhapsody Strategies. Yes, so I've been working with them now for 7 years. And some days, Naomi, I still feel like I'm a pastor. I'm having conversations with people who, as business owners or leaders or entrepreneurs, they're still experiencing brokenness and pain. They need a confidant, they need support, they need guidance, they need accountability. But for the most part, I'm not so much a life coach, even though I know lots about life. I'm more about helping a business move forward, or an entrepreneur or a creative that says, I really want to move the career side of my life forward. I've got a dream that I want to execute, but I keep getting stuck. And I feel like that's really where I'm able to express that desire to serve and to help people succeed.
Beautiful. And coaching, I think for those of you watching, I think there are a lot of different types of coaches, and coaching is something that's just being thrown around a lot, especially now. And so tying it back to being authentic and having a brand, I think aligning yourself with a coach that has your values and has the things that you want to achieve, that you see that in them, are the people that you need to look for. And so Steve is definitely one of those people. But I would encourage those of you who have never had coaching or who have, just been stuck in this space of, I don't know how to get from here to here. That might be just that little safety blanket and umbrella to get you from this step to this step. And like Steve said, like, you just can't always do everything on your own. You need people to come around you. So thank you. I hope people reach out to you.
Oh, that would be awesome. And all of the time, the first session is always free. I basically call it a discovery conversation where I ask a bunch of questions, and then at the end of the conversation, we ask whether or not it makes sense for us to work together. And if it doesn't, then that's fine, no pressure. But even that initial call usually brings some things to the surface that need to be focused on for the individual to be able to move forward.
Love it. Steve, it was such a pleasure and an honor to have you on this. And I feel like you gave so much wisdom in that little amount of time. And I think people are going to take a lot from it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to spend time with you.
Yes.